There we are. I'll give everybody a few minutes to pop on. Today we're going to talk about the Tunisian mosaic cowl that we have going on. The border is built into this, so for those of you that are familiar with our previous houndstooth border Tunisian cowl, for that we actually built in the border, and what makes that houndstooth pattern show up is the fact that you're doing the honeycomb stitch, but what you're doing is every other row you're changing the yarn color. So that purl stitch that bumps down the row below, that's what shows up for your houndstooth that makes the color drop below. So in essence, you're just doing the honeycomb stitch, but with the color changes every row is what's going to make the difference. Now the honeycomb border is built into the whole pattern that we have around the top and the bottom and the sides. There will be 5 stitches on each side that's the honeycomb stitch. Now the first loop on your hook is never done in a pattern stitch, and the last loop that's on your hook is never done in the pattern stitch. Those are edge stitches. So really you'll have like 4 stitches that'll be worked with the honeycomb. Also, your color changes. When you do your return pass, see if I can get my hook straightened out here. When you do your return pass, when you have that one loop left on your hook, to start a new color, that is what you're going to need when you're going to need to change color. And you're going to leave the color that's on your hook below. So we're going to be doing red and black for mine. If you wanted the green one or the brown one, you can pick your colors from there. So what you'll be doing is on your return pass, when you have the 2 loops that are left on your hook, then you're going to come down below and you're going to grab the red that we used before, and you're going to yarn over and pull that through, and that's going to give you the red on your hook to start. And when you do this too, I know I'm not a big fan of knots, so when you start your yarn, you can work under and over this. The problem with that is when you work under and over your tail, you can't tighten it up later on. So me personally, since you're working every other row in a different color, we're not going to have a lot of tails, because it's kind of like working with bobbins. Excuse me. So I am leaving my tail for my black that I started. That way when I yarn over and I pull through to start my red for the next row, I can take that tail and tighten it up, and that will tighten this loop that's on my hook. So this is going to be backwards for those that are right-handed, but I have the 2 loops on my hook, and I'm casting off. So when I yarn over and pull through 2, I want to do it with the red, and that's going to bring the red back up so that I can start. And as you can see, any of the purl bumps that were made, they drop down, and that's what creates our honeycomb stitch, but it's what creates the pattern for the houndstooth. So this will be built into your whole project. So like I said, the first 5 stitches and the last 5 stitches will be the honeycomb stitch, and you will be incorporating them, and the first loop that's on your hook and the last loop that you pick up, those are considered your edge stitches, so you will never purl those or work those in a pattern stitch. So what we're going to do here is, like I said, for this one, you want your tail loose so that way when you, because we're just starting the black, you can, when you tighten your black up, that's going to tighten the loop that's on your hook if you're using the working yarn. This is where we attached our black for that row. So what you want to do is take that tail and give it a tug, and that will tighten up the loop that's on your hook. And then you're going to pick up the red from below, and you're looking at the back side of my work. You're going to yarn over and pull through both of those to cast off that final stitch. And that's going to start you off with the red loop on your hook. to start your next row across. Your color change will always be done on the final cast off. And then if you give that tail just a tight pinch to tighten it up, it'll keep your edge tight. You really don't have to worry about twisting or anything else for this. There's really not going to be any twist for locking in bobbins or anything like that, because since we're only going to be doing the color changes for the border on your return pass, and then you're going to be adding the new color when you get to your next row, that is going to do the color changes for your honeycomb. Now, once we get our honeycomb border up, your initial stitches, as written in the pattern, is the TSS stitches are marked in the color that you're going to be doing them. The extended front post Tunisian simple stitch is the one that you're going to drop down into that previous color 2 rows above. So if we have worked a row of black, we're going to work a row of red. Then when we work that row of black, you're going to see the little X's on the pattern if you're looking at the actual graph. If you're looking at the written, it will tell you that they want you to extended front post Tunisian simple stitch, and you will do that down into that previous stitch of that color. So you're going to skip the row below it and go into the row that's below that, that's the color that we worked with. And there's really not going to be a lot of color changing in here. In the graph that we did, the reason I wanted to teach this method is we're going to be teaching 2 different things. You're going to be working on the houndstooth border, and that is going to get you up to your initial rows. On your right hand side of your pattern, you'll see that we have 1 color. And then on the opposite side, you'll see that we have another color. So for instance, if our lips are blue on this side, you're going to see that we have the black and the blue every other row. So those are mainly the colors you're going to be working with on the right hand side. On the left hand side, you'll see that we have red and black. So you're going to be working with red and black on that side, and in the center is the white. Your color changes are not going to happen until you reach the same section where the color change is. But with that being said, we're also going to be doing all of the black rows will remain black. So in those rows, you will not have a color change. So for instance, if that row has the black at the beginning, you will work that whole row in the black. And then you will yarn over and you'll do your cast off. And that's going to get you back to the beginning. The color changes are going to happen when you have the color changes. So for instance, in the pattern, when we get to the bottom of the lips, I think ours starts with a white. That is when you're going to add your white in, just like you would for Tunisian simple stitch, because what we're doing is that first row that you're connecting into will not have the extended front post Tunisian simple stitch. It will be done in a TSS, so you will have the white for that row. I still will be doing the same border color on the outside, but when you get to the center of your blanket, you will have on this side of your hook, we're going to be starting with the blue. So as you work across in your blue, when you hit the white, since those will be all Tunisian simple stitches, to start your color, you're not going to use, there's no X's in that because you can't drop down into the previous color without getting a jagged. So anything that is in a block that does not have the X in it will be a TSS. So you're going to be doing the color changes just as we would for a Graphghan. And this main live right now is focusing on the Tunisian honeycomb border, and there is about 15 rows that we're going to do. So once we get those 15 rows done, which should be, it should not take you guys, I think, I don't see any comments yet. It should only take you guys about 2 days to do the 15 rows. So what we're going to do is in those 2 days, Oh, there we have some people. I think that's Lisa, and I can't see the picture. Oh my goodness. They're so small today. I think my eyesight needs checked too, so that doesn't help. So what's going to happen is you're going to do your honeycomb base, which is going to give you the houndstooth border. Hey, Stephanie, that was your picture there. I couldn't see it. So what you're going to do is we're going to work those first 15 rows. And in those 15 rows, I think it's 15. You guys will have to, I'll have to check the pattern. I don't have it printed out next to me. But that's what we're going to do, is we're going to have this houndstooth border built in. Good afternoon, Stephanie. And as you can see, anytime you make the purl bump, it's going to drop below into that stitch and give you that houndstooth look. And again, let me pull this out. I'll show it one more time. For your houndstooth border, as we're doing this, every other row will be a different color. So you will have a red row to start if you're using the color palette I am. If not, you'll start with whatever dominant color you want your bottom to be. And then when you get back to the fact that you have 2 loops in the hook, our dark row, our contrasting color, is going to be our second row. So if you look at the pattern and you've printed out just the graph and you look at the bottom is black, or the bottom is red. That red is going to be your initial chain and cast on row. And in that initial chain and cast on row, it's in the written directions to chain 100 or chain 99. The loop on your hook will count as a stitch. So then you will work into the back bump all the way across, like all of our other cast on videos that we have for the group. So then you will cast on and you will have 100 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through 1, and you're going to cast off. That is a regular Tunisian return pass. You're going to do that until you get 2 loops on your hook. Once you have the 2 loops on your hook, you're going to yarn over and pull through the black. That's going to start your first row. And that's what I said earlier in the video. Please do not crochet over this tail. The reason is, when you get back to the beginning and you're casting off this black row, this stitch on the outside, everybody says, oh, my stitches on my right may be a little bit loose. This is the time that you can take and pull up your red yarn from below, because we're doing alternating rows of black and red to start. The green, the other one that I have is green and orange, so you will be using the black and orange or the black and green. It's going to depend on where you want your color placement to be. I will be releasing the graph in all 3 colors, but I released this one because it seemed that most people wanted the red, white, and blue over the St. Patty's Day one. So that's why I released this one first. The written will be exactly the same. You just will be using the different colors. So all 3 graphs will be available in here. But I started with the red and the blue today because that's what seemed like everybody on the lives that I do on Wednesdays seemed like they preferred. So when you get to the last cast off, you're going to pull through your new color. So I have done a row in red and a row in black. So now you're just going to pull up that red working yarn, and you're looking at the back of my work. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull up that red, and that is going to start your red for your next row. And at that point, if you feel like this loop is a little too loose, then you can grab that tail and you can tighten that. Now is the time that if you wanted to pull this up and work over that tail, you could, or you can weave it. I will be weaving because I am OCD about different colors and how they show up on things. So my black will be weaved through here, You can also take your black tail and do it when you do the black row next. You can pull it up and then we work over that. And I do have a video where I talk about how you work under and over the tail, so you would do one stitch. With the honeycomb stitch with the purl, it's harder to work under the tail. So what I do is I work the black with my tails, if I'm going to work over them after they're tightened. With the purl stitch, you're in the front of the work, so that's the easiest one to work under the tail. Or if you're working the TSS, it's easier to work over the tail for the TSS. So if you can kind of figure that out and keep that mindset that you're working over the tail for a TSS, you're working under the tail for the purl stitch, then it kind of makes it a little bit easier. But it's all going to be personal preference. You don't have to float your tails at all. You can weave them in. I prefer to weave my tails in because that's just how I am. But that's what I said. What we're going to do, what we're focusing on today is to get the houndstooth border done. And the houndstooth border, there is 4 rows of red. So you will have the red and the black. So that'll be about 8 rows. And then you're going to add your blue, and you will add your blue or whatever other color you want. That will be added the same way on your return pass. And at that point, since you're not working with the red on that side anymore, you can cut that, because as we're working up the right side, we will have our blue will be our cast on color, because our lips on that side are blue and they're red on the opposite side. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you guys 2 days to get your border done. Once you have your border done on Thursday, is Thursday better for you guys or Friday? Then what I can do is do another live where I come in and we're going to talk about the color change, because when we're adding our color, like I said, that first row will just be Tunisian simple stitch. You will be working Tunisian simple stitch in whatever color that row says, and Thursday's better, JC, until we get to the bottom of that lip. Where the bottom of the lip is, that first row that you do across, you will do in blue, and you will work your way across with the Tunisian simple stitch in blue. And then you're going to add your white for the bottom of that lip. And then from where that lip stops in the Tunisian simple stitch, you will be picking up and adding the red to go across. And that is going to be done exactly the same. That first row is done exactly the same as if you were doing color changes for a Tunisian blanket. So I will have a tutorial on that. I will talk about that during the live and show you what we're doing. With that row, when you do the Tunisian simple stitch and you're adding those colors in, those would probably be the only time that I would say you can work over the tail. And if I do it, I would only do 1 or 2 stitches. You can do the whole thing. I prefer to have a knot in the back of mine. Not that any of mine have ever come undone, but I do prefer to knot my tail in. So with that being said, you can also do a square knot when you add your yarn, since we're doing different colors. So with that being said, once we get up to the lip section and we have our blue and we add the white, when you're adding your white, you could always take your white onto the back and do a square knot with your blue and your white. There are a few people too that like to do where you do the knot around the yarn. So you tie your knot around the yarn and then you can slide your knot down. And that will keep your working yarn free so that you can if you had to frog, it's easier to cut that knot out, and you can slide that knot up and down. So with that being said, what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you guys 2 days, and I will see you guys Thursday. And what we're going to do on Thursday is we're going to look at the houndstooth bottom that we have started. And like I said, I don't have the pattern printed out right in front of me, but it's like 15 or 16 rows where you have the red and then the blue. I will be getting up the pattern for the green one and the chocolate one. We're going to call it Guinness. And those two patterns will be up. The Guinness colored one and the green one will be up today as well. I have to merge all them and do all the written and do everything for those. And then, like I said, what you're going to do is the honeycomb stitch. And you're going to do that for all those, you know, the 4 rows of the red, which is 8 rows because you have red and black. And then the 4 rows of the blue, which is 8 rows because you have the red and the black, or the black and the blue. And then you're going to start your pattern across. And when we get to that pattern where you start the pattern across is where I will be joining you guys back up to show you what we're going to do. But your color changes for those first rows where you have just the bottom of the lip. All of those that are marked in the pattern that just have a blue square, a red square, a white square, a black square, those will all be a Tunisian simple stitch. Those will not be a front post extended Tunisian simple stitch. They will not drop down. And the reason that is you can't have the mosaics dropping down when you start, because you need the definition of the color to be cleaner. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Like I said, we're going to be starting the first few rows of this, and your color changes will be done on your return pass when you have the 2 loops left on the hook. And for the first 8 rows here, because like I said, we have 4 rows of red and 4 rows of black, you can carry your red and black up. You will cut your red once you get to that blue row. That's 8 rows up. So after that last row of black, where the blue starts, you can cut your red right before that. So after your last red row, you can cut your yarn and you can work under and over that tail, or you can weave that tail in, however you choose to do it. And that will give you your first 16 rows. And that 16 rows will be done in this honeycomb stitch. So as long as you guys are familiar with the purl stitch and you're familiar with the simple stitch, all you have to do is follow that up. Now, if you are not familiar with the Tunisian simple stitch and purl stitch, and you can't really recognize them yet, then what I do recommend is when you start your row and you're starting your honeycomb stitch in a purl stitch, then take a stitch marker and mark that row. Now, with that being said, if I started you do your initial row here, which is your chain, and then you cast on your stitches. So this is worked in a TSS, so there's no purl stitch there. If I chose to start my honeycomb stitch in this black, then this would be row 1 of my pattern. This would be row 2. So then I know that every even row is where my purl stitch will be. So you can either mark that and move your stitch marker up, or you can remember that every black row will start with a purl stitch. If you're going to do it the other way, where you start this row with a Tunisian simple stitch and then you do your next row with a purl stitch, you're going to remember that every colored row starts with a purl stitch for your border. So even if you put a stitch marker in your black, you're going to know that every black row is what you're going to be using for your purl stitch to start that row. If you put it in a colored stitch, or you put it in your red stitch down here, or whatever color you're using, then you're going to know that your colored starts your purl row. And it's pretty easy to follow through. The only other time that I think you guys might have to mark is when you get up here and you're at the end and you're at your last 5 stitches. If this was a purl stitch, then I would mark that, because unfortunately when you change rows or you change the stitch count for your pattern, then what happens is I have started and I have the loop on my hook here, and that is an odd stitch. Even though it's an edge stitch, it's still the first stitch of the pattern. And then for the second stitch, I'm starting that with a purl stitch, so I would have my stitch marker into that. When you get across to the other side, not all patterns are going to start the border on an even stitch or an odd stitch, so it's not always going to be the same. So that is the only one that you might have to mark on this side, is if this side is starting with a purl stitch or a knit stitch or a purl stitch or a simple stitch, then you can mark that side, and then you'll know that, you know, that purl stitch is going to fall on every red row after that, because you're working 5 stitches in. So let's see, that's 95, so that would be an odd stitch, and that odd stitch, since we started with a purl stitch as stitch 2, every even stitch is going to be a purl stitch. So on this side, your honeycomb pattern is going to start in an odd stitch, so it's going to start with a Tunisian simple stitch. So that's one thing that you're going to have, you know, that I would mark on this side once you get to that. Once you get to your border and you've done the first row of the pattern. Does anybody have any questions so far? That'll give you guys 2 days to be able to do your honeycomb border with both of the colors, which is then giving you the houndstooth border. Once you get to the houndstooth border, I will be back here on Thursday at noon, and I will show you what we need to do from there. And again, all of your color changes are going to be done as a Tunisian simple stitch color change for those first rows of the lips, because you're just adding the colors in. And when I come back on Thursday, I will be explaining when to change the colors, and I will be showing you an example. And there will also be a video in the group by then on the color changes for the TSS color change. And I am hoping to have the Tunisian, the mosaic color change available for those that happen to work ahead faster. So I'm hoping to have that video up. If not, it will be up that evening. So for all of you that are familiar with the Tunisian simple stitch color change, we will be using that for the first row of the lips. And you will be working in the blue across, the white to the lip, and then the red to finish it over. So if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Does everybody think that they can get their honeycomb border done by Thursday, since it's only like 16 rows? Stephanie says, yes, ma'am. Have I lost anybody? Does everybody understand what I've explained so far? And again, when you guys start your blue or your next color, do not work over that tail, because when you cast that first row off of that blue, it's easier to take that tail and tighten it up at that point. So that is another reason why I do not work over the tail when I'm first adding the color, and it's easier to weave it in. So if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to ask in here or ask in the group. I will be checking it quite often. I do have an engagement Thursday evening, so I will not be available for the evening hours, but I will be doing the live on Thursday again, and I will have the pattern up for the St. Patty's Day March Love Lips. There's the green pattern, and I will also have the pattern up for the Guinness Love Lips that are the chocolate color. So I will be working on that today, and I will be finishing up my houndstooth border, and then I will meet you back here on Thursday. If anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to post in here. And there will also be a video for the color changes once I get up to that point. So I will be feverishly working to try to get ahead of you guys. All right, since it looks like there's not any other questions, ask in the group or ask in here, and I will give you a hand. All right, guys, I will see you Thursday. Bye.